I request Dr. S. Rajasabhabadi, Head of the Department of Plastic Hand and Microsurgery, to welcome the gathering.
President of this evening's function, Mr. Jairam Varadaraj, the orator of the Ganga Hospital orator, Mr. Muthuraman, Mrs. Muthuraman, distinguished invitees and guests. Every year when we have this Founders Convention, I always ask ourselves the question, what it means to us. What it really means is that it's an occasion for us to thank Lord Almighty for giving our founders as our parents, and for the platform that they have given us for us to jump, and also as an opportunity for having such an extended Ganga family to work with. I think we take a lot of pride in that, and we cherish what we achieve. And it also gives us an opportunity to have a pioneer in any field of walk of life, and who has really made by his work India proud, to come over to Coimbatore and to provide us the values for which we all stand for. But has it been achieved? Has it been worked? And then if you go out and consider every oration that you had, starting from 2013, we started this oration series when our father reached 80. We starting from Dr. Devi Shetty to Subarto Bakshi. In between we had Mr. Gopal Swami, the Home Secretary of India, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, the Executive Director of Tata Sons, Mr. Venu Srinivasan, the historian Ramchandra Guha, and every one of them have really inspired us. And the feedback that we got from all of those who attended the meeting was exemplary. And then this event has now become, and I look forward to event in our city. And on this day, I have great pleasure in welcoming our orator, Mr. Muthuraman. Some time back, a few months back, one of the former orators, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, he just rang me up for some medical issue, and then we are talking. And then finally he asked the question, how is your oration going? Who is your orator this year? I said, sir, we are just finalizing. And then he asked me a question, you still have your love for Ratan Tata? He asked, yes, sir, I always have it. And then he said, the time will be too short, but then Mr. Muthuraman is to be a great orator. To which I immediately replied, sir, I know Mr. Muthuraman very well, but he doesn't know us at all. And you know both. I think if this has to happen, it can happen only through you. I think he really didn't expect that line, and immediately said, Doctor, what you say is true. Okay, I'll see. And then he said, okay, let's see a little later out. And immediately he switched off the phone. And 5 minutes later, he called me again and he said, Doctor, I have spoken to Mr. Muthuraman. He has agreed to be your orator this year. And immediately I will text you his number and his email, and you will take it forward. I think that's how he is here today, sir. We thank you for coming, and we also thank Mr. Gopalakrishnan for making it possible, sir. And later in the conversations that I had and the emails that we exchanged, and he asked me what should I speak, I said I wrote the topics of the previous orations and said something akin to achieving excellence or keeping values and all that. And he said in one of the letters, he said, I will talk about this because I see that your organization is growing. And he said that I believe that every organization or institution needs to transform itself and needs to reinvent itself on a continuous basis for it to be sustainable and serve its customers and the society. He said, he gave me only one choice. He said either you could term it as organizational transformation, or if you think you are an institution, you could term it as institutional transformation. So I chose the topic as institutional transformation for this talk today. I think this is very, very relevant because we in the healthcare, we are dealing with a product which is really priceless. For every other thing, industry, you can put a price tag. And then what we are dealing with is life, and for which life, you can really not put a first tag. And then that was the topic of the first oration when Devi Shetty spoke. And this was the first slide he put. He said, putting a price tag on human life. I think that's very, 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 very appropriate. And when we are dealing with a subject like that, where we are not able to put a price tag, and to keep growing and to make it affordable and accessible to the people. If you're operating or if you're providing specialized services, we really require organizational transformation every few years, and that's what we have been doing. And every few years when we are expanding that. Now we are at a stage where we are poised to make the next expansion. At the time, this topic could not come at a better time when you are poised to make the next expansion. Those of you who read the week and a couple of weeks, the title of the cover page of the story was Tata's at 150. That is when they celebrated the Christie centennial celebrations. And that's a wonderful issue. And as a response to this issue, one of the readers has written in the letters to the editor, he said, the nomenclature of the Tata has the resonance of a class apart. I think that's exactly what I feel about the Tatas. So the nomenclature of the Tata has a resonance apart. And the Tatas, institution like Tatas, Aravind, Mayo Clinic has always been an inspiration for us. And we're extremely happy that we have and I read a lot of books on Tatas, and then Muthuraman has really been in the Tata Steel for almost half a century. And in the book by R.M. Lala, The Romance of Tata Steel, the foreword of it is written by Ratan Tata. He said that the strength of the company is embodied in the spirit of the people and the unbelievable will to win. But then all of us have to ask this question, who has created the spirit? Who has sustained the spirit, and what has made it effective? I think if we need to seek these answers for us to grow, I think we need a person like Muthuraman to do that. And in the last few pages of the same book, they asked Muthuraman as to what is that. And then Muthuraman has said that Tata Steel is a unique organization. It has a formal structure. He goes on. And he tells about the people that states that they take on initiatives and targets beyond the obvious and beyond what a structured approach would result in. Beyond these structures is the passion and the aspirations of the people. This is what has brought them to where they are today. I think what we are here today, ladies and gentlemen, is to hear firsthand as to how he steered the company. And we find that Tata Steel is also evolving. I see, even if you see their campaigns, they are all campaigning sometime before they also said, we also make steel. And now they are campaigning, we also make tomorrow. I think that's what they are making it when the Tata's at 150, I think the campaign has changed and then said, instead of now we also make steel, they said now we also make tomorrow. So thank you so much for your coming, and we look forward to hearing you. So when I heard that, when I got the okay from Mr. Muthuraman, I immediately picked up the phone, and then next I rang. The person to whom I rang was Mr. Jairam, to whom I hold in high esteem. We have got, Coimbatore has got a lot of manufacturing industries. One of the persons whom I most admire is Mr. Jairam Varadaraj. As he says, from the smallest compressor for garages to huge ones for the OEMs and the vendors, we supply them all. And then he always tries to do better. Every time I meet him, I always ask him, what's new? Even today, I asked him, what is new? And I also have another occasion where, another reason to be very thankful to him today, because he had agreed to be here a long time back. And then he had gone to US and he cut short his visit. And then exactly landed up last night. He said, I just came back because I had to keep up the word I gave it to you, and I had to be present on this occasion. Thank you so much. And on behalf of all of the people present here, I welcome you for coming. He's always said, great speeches can make a difference. I sincerely believe it does. And for us, every founder's oration has done that to us. And hope you all have a good evening, and welcome all of you who have responded to our invitation. Thank you very much, and hearty welcome.
Thank you, sir. Always better. Their tagline speaks volumes about LG Equipments, which through the years, as an institution, has transformed and reinvented itself by adapting the business to digital era and Internet of Things. Under the stewardship of Dr. Jairam Varadaraj, LG Equipments is India's leading air compressor manufacturer and has made our city proud. I request you, sir, to deliver the presidential address.
Can we close this or? Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me, Orthodox. It's a pleasure for me to be here. We have a great leader amongst us who's done some tremendous things. I've been a big fan of his. Our attention span is also limited, so I'm going to keep myself short so that we listen to him and don't get tired by what I have to say. I'm glad that I'm speaking before you, sir, because you'd be a hard act to follow. So in a sense that I'm grateful that you slotted me before. I have a little bit of a difference in, different take on the topic of institutional transformation. I'd like to talk about institution itself. Yeah. What is an institution? Because institutions, in the context of what I'm going to explain, transform society, whether it's the larger society, whether it's a country, or the small ecosystem that all of us govern and are responsible for. Institutions transform them, not organizations. Now, for me, we all seem to exist thinking that we are going to live forever, but the reality of our mortality is clear. Human life is probably 100,000 years or older, and some of us who are lucky will have maybe 80 to 100 years of healthy life. But we are responsible for organizations during our lifetime, and we have a responsibility to convert those organizations into institutions and leave them behind. So there is a certain compulsion that we have to look at, which is a little different from just purely running the organization on a day-to-day basis. Now, as I reach my transition into my next, I have to give it up, I've been kind of in a pretty serious quest for understanding what makes an institution. What is it that drives it? What are the architectural elements of an institution? This quest is far from complete, but I've been looking at some examples to understand what are the key drivers. So this is work in process. I don't have answers, but I would like to share with you some thoughts. Now, institutions last a long, long time. Now, organizations don't necessarily do. So how do you sustain institutions over many decades, probably centuries? So I went and looked at institutions that have lived that kind of a tenure, have a tenure of that lifespan. Very interesting that I found very few for-profit organizations. The oldest organization, for-profit company in the world is a Japanese hotel. It's 1,313 years old. The name of the hotel, if I may be permitted to say it in very bad Japanese, it's Nishiyama Onsen Keikunkan. Now, 1,313 years is a serious institution. It's not an organization anymore, right? So we'll come back and talk a little bit about what is unique about that particular company. And then when I started digging deeper beyond, it kind of flattened out. Very few companies that have that kind of a span. There are things like the Royal Mint, which is about 600 or 700 years old. The Royal Mail, these are not for-profit organizations. Organizations, no doubt, but they're not for profit. Then I went into universities. These are universities that have spanned many centuries. Oxford, 922 years old. Cambridge, 800. Then you have the next genre of the American universities, which is Harvard at 382. Then you go into social organizations. The Salvation Army, 153 years old. The Red Cross, is 132. And the oldest Indian company still surviving, not incorporated by an Indian, but it's still owned today by an Indian, is EID Parry at 1839 was when they were in. So in relative terms, we are all very young. Now, how do we sustain ourselves over a long period of time? I have some theory. Like I said, this whole thing is work in process for me. One is aspirations. If you look at all these organizations that I've mentioned that have spanned multiple hundreds of years, they have an aspiration which is beyond what they have seen at that point when they started. It's not about annual goals, it's not about some objective, it's about aspiring something that's beyond yourself. All of them had those kinds of aspirations that were far beyond what they were at that time. Nowhere is that aspiration story. Every time we talk about aspirations, large aspirations, aspirations that are bigger than ourselves, we tend to talk about limitations of resources. We tend to say, yeah, but we are not limited. We don't have this, we don't have that. But I think we need to remind ourselves what happened in 1947. In 1947, we got our freedom, it was our aspiration, and we had zero resources. The British controlled the resources, but we had a dream. And the dream was freedom, which was far beyond what was possible when the dream was dreamt. So what is our dream? What are the dreams that we need to create for our organizations to transform them into institutions? Second, which I think is something that we need to be very conscious of, is equity within the organization. Unfortunately, in our country, equity is something that is just is actually discounted deeply. The difference between the person, economic difference between the person at the highest level to the lowest level in an organization is very important to convert an organization into an institution. Today in the world, the US leads that dubious distinction. The multiple between the lowest paid employee and the highest paid employee in the US is 390, a multiple of 390. And you'll be surprised, India is not very far behind, it's 350. And a country like Japan, which is known for building sustained success under very adverse conditions, is a multiple of 90. So we got to reflect on this. The question really is, do we need mavericks? Mavericks do not build institutions. Mavericks build organizations. Sure, we need leaders, generational leaders who come in, but leaders who are not mavericks, leaders who are part of the entire team where there is equity in that whole institution. So we need to think about equity, and I think as a country we have a larger issue that we need to think about, and what change has to come from us first. The third piece that is important, I believe, is governance. Now, it's very interesting for me, going back to the example of the Japanese hotel. What was interesting is succession in that hotel. It's still owned by a family, but the succession in that family was not by birth, by competence. So every leader who represented the family chose his successor from the community and adopted that person into the family. So the governance that was required was based on competence, not by birth. Now, if we have nepotism as a foundation, then we don't build an institution, because competence is the foundation for our institution building. Now, the same platform of talking about governance, we have seen failure of governance even when there is family involved. The most sensational case in India is the Satyam computers. We had the family involved in it, But what was missing is a very strong independent governance structure, which went beyond just family ownership, which talked about the institution rather than the family. An interesting thing that some of you may know, some of you may not know, is the current chairman of Suzuki Motors, Osamu Suzuki, is not from that family. He's an adopted member, and adopted by virtue of his competence. So, at the end of the day, my quest, and I hope everyone's quest, is to build institutions in the spheres that we influence. Institutions transform people, institutions transform society, and I hope that, I know Ganga Hospital is well on its way. The kind of things that they do are all foundations for building institutions. I won't be around another 100 years, but I'm pretty sure that if somebody 200 years from now reads the history, there'll be somebody here talking about Ganga Hospital as an example of an institution. Thank you again for this opportunity, and my best to you.
The empires of the future are empires of the mind. With your advice on ethics, governance, and I'm sure our organization, Ganga Hospital, in its path of transformation, would adopt these and be one among the organizations that go into centuries. To Gandhiji goes the credit for molding and crystallizing the political conscience of India. Jamshedji Tata laid the foundation and largely consolidated the positioning of Indian industry and enterprise. In Indian industry, the term integrity and Tata are synonymous, and the House of Tatas and its many organizations have the stamp of stability, security, and success. This was not an easy success, and there is at no stage in its development any trace of the neo-rich makeup. The journey of a nation is etched with industrial and cultural transformation that takes place, and the Tatas have largely contributed to nation building. At this juncture, when Ganga Hospital progresses to its next stage of expansion, it is only apt that we have a stalwart from the Tatas talk to us on institutional transformation. Padma Shri Mr. Muthuraman is a leader with a vision. Tata Steel became a truly global company under his leadership. The acquisition of Chorus UK and Netherlands in 2007 was a landmark event, not only in the history of Indian steel industry, but also in the history of India, which demonstrated the coming of age of Indian companies on the global map. Mr. Muthuraman is the recipient of many awards and is the ex-chairman Tata International Limited and ex-vice chairman Tata Steel Limited. Today, we are very honored and proud to present the 6th Founders Day Oration plaque to Padma Shri Mr. Muthuraman. I request our founders, Dr. J.G. Shanmuganathan and Mrs. Kanagavalli Shanmuganathan, to present the plaque to Mr. Muthuraman. I request our directors, Dr. Rajshekhar and Dr. S. Rajasabhabadi and Dr. Jairam Vardharaj, to accompany them. The oration has an honorarium of rupees 1 lakh, which Mr. Muthuraman has requested to be gifted to an orphanage in Orissa. I request you, sir, to deliver the address and inspire us.
A very good evening to all of you. Dr. Shanmuganathan, Mrs. Kanagavalli Shanmuganathan, the founders of this great institution, Mr. Jayaram Varadaraj, Managing Director of LG Equipments, Dr. Raja Sabhabati, Dr. Rajashekaran, all members of the extended family of the Ganga Hospital who are present here, citizens of Coimbatore, and particularly I see some of my friends and ex-colleagues from Jamshedpur, so it's such a pleasure to see you all, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at the famous Ganga Hospital premises, delivering the 6th annual Founders' Day oration of this very great institution. In these nearly 40 years or a little over 40 years of existence, the Ganga Hospital has achieved a great deal. You have grown in size from some 5 beds, I was told, to close to 500 beds, 480 or 500 beds. You have grown in stature to an institution that is now recognized all over India and all over the world for its specialization, for its work ethic, and for its excellence. You have won several awards, both national and international. You have built several best practices in your field of expertise. And at the same time, you have managed to preserve your core values of honesty, integrity, ethics, and of course continue to contribute to the society in a very significant way. The last mentioned characteristic of yours that are contributing to the society is something which resonates in my heart. Because I come from an institution, the Tata Group, which for over 150 years have believed that the prime purpose of an organization is to improve the quality of life of people around. And to do that prime purpose well, you need to run your organizations well and profitably, so that part of the profits can go back to the society. I also liked your vision statement, where both India and the world prominently features, which implies that your dreams are high and lofty. I see that in your mission statement, you have incorporated quality treatment at affordable cost as a prime objective or a prime mission, which is very important for India and something which my very good friend Dr. Dev Shetty keeps on talking about. One of your facets that I was happy to read about is that you have a very good blend of clinical and academic research activities, which means you are a knowledge-creating organization, which is fundamental prerequisite for sustainability. An organization needs to be like a university where people work and learn, and because of learning become better at their work, and this cycle keeps repeating itself. In fact, Mr. C.K. Prahlad, who hails from this very city of Coimbatore, equates performance to the ability of an organization to create new knowledge and practice it. So I know that I am here today at a very special place. In Ganga Hospital, I see an institution that is continuously learning and actually continuously reinventing and transforming itself all the time. Now, as it happens, that is the subject of my talk this evening, institutional transformation. I am going to talk about transformation at Tata Steel, from a company which is also a RAN company in the pre-90s, in the pre-1990s, into a world-class performer in the last few years, and my own interpretation of the events surrounding this transformation and my learnings from it. But before I do that, I want to touch upon for a few minutes about sustainability of organizations and institutions, much in the same way that Dr. Jairam Varadaraj did so eloquently. A long and prosperous life is one of mankind's most cherished goals. Since the dawn of time, we have sought the elixir of longevity for ourselves and have largely succeeded. The average life expectancy of human beings has continuously increased over time. But what about the institutions and organizations that we ourselves create? How can we ensure that institutions and organizations, the very legacy of our economic and social endeavors, survive and thrive for centuries and continue to contribute to the society and people at large? The average life expectancy of multinational companies, if you go through a Forbes 500 list, is probably around 40 to 50 years and continuously shrinking. But why is it shrinking all the time? When the human life expectancy is continuously going up all the time and we find ways and means of doing that. In order to address this issue and in order to address this very interesting issue, in the early 80s, the Royal Dutch Shell Company, which is probably the third largest company at that time, commissioned a research study on the sustainability of organizations, sustainability of companies by and large. Or why is it that some companies live long and why is it some die young? The research came to the conclusion that long-living organizations and long-living companies have four fundamental characteristics in common. The first one is that they have a very high degree of adaptability. Adaptability to technological changes, adaptability to market requirements, adaptability to customer requirements, adaptability to political appeals, adaptability to wars if they were to happen in the world, ability to adapt themselves, ability to transform themselves. This is of course the subject of my talk today. The second observation that they came up with is that long-living companies are one with the society. They have an excellent culture of giving back to the society. And this is what this committee appointed by Royal Dutch Shell found out. The third, and very interestingly, they tolerate experimentation. They tolerate unconventional thinking. They give power to the people. It's a distributed power. When I say power, what I meant is not hierarchical power, but power to do experiment, power to fail, ability not to be misunderstood if failure has happened and so on. The fourth is they are always conservative in financial matters, which is the ability to govern oneself in terms of its growth and not overgrow. So these four important characteristics of ability to adapt, oneness with the society, tolerance of experimentation and new ideas and unconventional thinking, and conservative in being in finance have been the four characteristics. And these four basic principles of sustainability of organizations, institutions hold good even today. In fact, they have become even more relevant in today's world where things change even more rapidly. Tata Steel is a 111-year-old company. It was established in 1907 during the British Raj. It came up in spite of very challenging circumstances. The British did not want a steel plant in India. And because all the steel that India required, which is around 100,000 tons of steel in the year 1900, was all imported from the UK. The British also did not want to help with technology. They didn't want to help us with finance. Our founder Jamshedji Tata had to go to the US for technology and raise with money in India with great difficulty. In fact, in the initial periods of time, in the first 20 odd years, Tata Steel almost went broke, and which was saved by the Tata family pledging their personal jewelry to save the company. Then came the socialistic era of the government of India, under which Tata Steel was under government control for everything. Government decided what we can produce, how much we can produce, at what price we can sold, to whom we can sell, whether we can expand or not. Every single decision of the operation of the company was determined by the government. So we were under British rule for some 40 years and under Indian government's total control of socialistic era for another 44 years. So till the time Indian economy was freed from the shackles of control in 1991. But throughout this period, as it is today, Tata Steel was always known to be an honest, ethical company, caring for its employees, particularly the labor, caring for the society with a focus on nation building. In fact, when I look back on Tata Steel's contribution to nation building over a century, it is truly amazing. But that's not the subject of conversation today. But can you imagine the business mindset of a company that has lived in a controlled, uncompetitive era for as long as 84 years? Tata Steel's state of affairs in the early part of the 90s, around 91, 92, is best described by Arthur D. Little, a consultant whom we had appointed in 1990, about a year or so before the expected economic liberalization of 1991. Arthur D. Little, after studying Tata Steel for almost 2 years, said the following in their conclusion of their multi-volume report. They said our technology was outdated and completely inefficient. They said we had no customer and market orientation. They said that we had too many people and that our manpower mix was completely lopsided and inefficient. They said we had very little automation and very little IT systems for a modern company. They said our decision-making processes are too cumbersome and complex. In short, what Arthur D. Little said was that Tata Steel was not fit enough to live in a competitive, economically free era. And that Tata Steel will probably soon die. Around the same time, one of the famous consultants of the world went to Mr. Ratan Tata, who had just taken over as the chairman of or who was about to take over as the chairman of the company, and said that, look, this company, Tata Steel, is not fit to be in the Tata group, Tata stable, and you need to find a way to dispose it off. That was the advice that Mr. Ratan Tata got from a even now famous consultant company. The Arthur D. Little report was for sure a severe indictment on Tata Steel and the way it was run and the way it was being led. Of course, we also knew that it had a lot to do with 84 long years of administered control, which where no creativity and no innovation was necessary, nor it was possible, as the necessary ambience for this did not exist. But we had to face the facts. Irrespective of what the history made us out to be, we need to face the facts and we needed to face tomorrow and the future. But we knew that we had to act, and we had to act very fast. When I recall those days of struggle with the future, looking bleak and blank, and only our passion to perform as the only positive element in our armory, I always remember what Patanjali said. And Patanjali said this sometime in 300 BC, and I'm going to quote that. I quote, "When you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed." This is what Patanjali said in the year 300 BC. This is not what somebody like Peter Drucker or somebody from the Western world said in the 21st century. And this Patanjali quote, I always used to keep it on my table and I think I must have distributed maybe 300 or 400 of them to my colleagues sometime in the middle of 1990s. The situation in Tata Steel was really hopeless. But as a team, we were determined that we had to take actions, and we had to take some quick actions. It is very hard to describe the transformation of a very large company in just 30 or 40 minutes speech. So I'm going to deal with some few examples and few anecdotes to give you a flavor of what we did and how a sleeping giant and a also ran company was transformed into a nimble-footed world-class performer. And I'm going to give in probably 3 or 4 headings. On the quality front, which in our view was the most fundamental characteristic that a good company must possess. On the quality front, we knew we had to make very big and quantum changes. We went to JUICE. JUICE is the Japan Union of Scientists and Engineers, and learnt the art of total quality management, TQM, and total productive management, TPM, and their principles. We brought Japanese experts on TQM and TPM to Jamshedpur to teach us as to how to implement these. We went to experts from General Electric to learn about Six Sigma concepts of improvements. We went to Mr. Eliyahu Goldratt to learn the concepts behind theory of constraints and its application to manufacturing and supply chain management. We went to the US and learnt about the Malcolm Baldrige criteria of business excellence. I know you doctors must be knowing about it, because Malcolm Baldrige criteria of excellence has a health sector excellence as well. The basic idea in all this was to learn. Learn what we did not know, which needs to start by accepting the current reality that we did not know enough. If you visited Tata Steel in the mid-90s and late 90s, you would come across a scenario where every division, every department, every section and every individual was engaged in some quality improvement project or the other. There were thousands and thousands of programs running across the company. Visitors to Tata Steel and even some world-class consultants used to ask us about different people and different departments following different approaches to improve quality. Some TQM, some TPM, and some Six Sigma, some value engineering, some theory of constraints, and so on. They used to ask us, with so many different approaches, don't your people get completely confused? We always used to answer in one way, that in our religion, each one of us worship different gods. But there is no confusion about what we are seeking. The same is the case with adoption of different technologies by different people in our company. Let people experiment. Let people try, and they will find out what is good for themselves. The job of leadership is to create an ambience for trying, an ambience for learning, an ambience for free thinking, an ambience for experimentation, and an ambience even for failure of a big attempt. With thousands of quality improvement projects going on across the company, it was really a frenzy in the company. There are quality competition between departments, there were recognitions, there were awards, there were celebrations. In essence, we were fanatical about quality. It is unbelievably difficult for me to describe what was happening in those years in the company. Around the same time, in the mid-90s, the Tata Group as a whole established an award for quality in the name of Mr. J.R.D. Tata, called the J.R.D. Tata Quality Value Award, J.R.D.QV Award, and a concept by the name Tata Business Excellence Model. It was called the TBEM, just similar to Malcolm Baldrige Award for Business Excellence. The concept of TBEM and the award in the group started in 1995. And no company in the Tata Group, we all used to apply for it every year, and no company in the Tata Group ever won the award till the year 2000. In the year 2001, Tata Steel won the award, the first company to win that award by crossing the threshold of 600 points out of 1000. This is the result of 8 to 10 years of hard work on various fronts, including on the quality front. I still remember what Mr. Ratan Tata said while giving away that JRDQ award. He said, I did not expect a brick and mortar company to win this award first. What he of course meant was that it is far more difficult to institute quality systems in a brick and mortar company than in a modern IT company with fewer people. Quality improvement is never a journey. It is a never-ending journey. The better you become at it, the better you become at quality, the more room you will find to improve. This is the hallmark of sustainable institution. Never be satisfied with status quo. In 2008, Tata Steel won the Deming Application Prize in Japan. And in 2012, it won the Deming Grand Prize in Japan, the only steel company outside Japan that have ever won the Deming Prize, ever. There is an unbelievable difference between what we were in terms of quality in 1995 and what we are today. Today, quality is in the DNA of Tata Steel and is a major lever in the continuous transformation of Tata Steel. The second example I want to cite is on the performance improvement and cost, so on. On the performance improvement and cost reduction front, with the help of McKinsey, the consultants, we adopted a program called the Total Operating Performance Program. It is called the TOP, where employees in small groups were encouraged to set targets and find ways to reach those targets through conversations, through experimentation, and through trial and error. This is about empowering people and giving them freedom and space. You won't believe the kind of results this program produced. There were years when we saved 500 to 800 crores of rupees through cost reduction, waste reduction, yield improvement and performance improvement. These savings are huge considering the fact that they were often higher than the total profit of the company in the previous year. It was an amazing program which increased the confidence level of all the employees. We realized during the implementation of the Total Operating Performance Program that performance improvement and institutional transformation is not simply a technical exercise or a functional exercise. It is an emotional exercise and a motivational exercise and is a process through which people develop leadership skills as well, and which is also a reason why a transformation efforts in a company is continuously important. Through the TOP program, we reduce cost drastically, reduce waste, found ways to use waste in our own processes, reduce consumption of power and water and all other consumables. The TOP program was soon implemented in other functions of the company like sales, marketing, procurement and in hospital too. This program made major improvements possible in Tata Steel and helped to change the mindset. This is the initial times of mindset change of the people of Tata Steel to believing that anything is really possible. As a continuation of this TOP program and a program which we have even today, and I think I touched upon this program today morning when I was talking to some of the doctors in the hospital, that we have a program called the Manthan program. And this Manthan in Hindi means churn. And this Manthan program, we collect about 40 or 50 workers. They're all from the unionized cadre, sweepers, workers, unskilled people and so on and so forth. They're all in a room with no executive, no officer present. They discuss a problem which may be a common problem between various departments. It could be about safety, it could be about some methods, it could be about life of a gear, whatever it is. And you won't believe that in a 2-3 hour conversation, they will come up with some solutions. Then they will go back and experiment and find out and come back after 2 or 3 months, the same group will meet as to what happened to the result. The power of people who have never been to schools and colleges, the power of the mind of the people who are in this unionized category is something which is really amazing. And this program brought that out. And I could see that many programs, and in fact, I may as well tell you that when Professor Abdul Kalam, when he was the President of India, visited Jamshedpur, I gave him options of several things for him to see. He was coming to attend a program in Tata Steel on the success of Tata Steel over 75 years of no industrial strike. 75 years of industrial peace program we were celebrating. And in that program, when he had a little bit of a time, he had a couple hours time. So I asked him, what would he like to see? Should I take him around the steel company? Should I show him some important technological improvements that we have done? Should I show him the research and development department and some new products that we have developed? Or I asked him that workers have made an exhibition on their own innovations. He said, I want to see that. I don't want to see anything else. I want to see what the workers have done. And he came and spent 2 hours in the small improvements that the workers together have done, which has come out through this program of Manthan. During this period of constant search and improvement, we went on a learning spree. We went to wherever from where we could learn. We went to Jews of Japan, we went to TPM and TQM gurus of Japan, we went to the GE experts, we went to Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt, we went to Boston Consulting, we went to Arthur D. Little, we went to Booz Allen Hamilton, we went to Flo Daniel and Bechtel for project management, we went to Hay Group, we went to Nippon Steel and Thyssen Steel for learning how to make better quality steels and how to improve our operations. So we went to every single place without shame or without feeling sort of any different way, saying that we as somebody who don't know enough needed to know what is happening in the world. And at that time, I also recall we started a training program in France, a program which I attended called CEDEP. CEDEP is a continuing education program under INSEAD, the management school in France. And they had a leadership development program. It was a very expensive program. It was costing almost 1 crore per person. And Tata Steel was not making profits. It was facing a loss. And Tata Steel management decided that we will send 10 boys to this program every year at a time when the company was not making profits. It was just an amazing thing. It was a bold move to spend 1 crore on a person for about 8 or 10 people at a time when the company was not making profit at all, which gave a lot of dividends. So we went to everybody in the world to learn. But there is one area where we did not go to a consultant because it was entirely a local issue. There are no templates, there are no benchmarks available in the world on this subject. This issue was regarding manpower and in terms of both quality as well as in terms of quantity. And what I am going to describe to you is something which often we don't describe in public. But when you talk about transformation, you need to tell the positive stories as well as stories which don't sound all that great, but it had a great impact on the people of the company and on the company and in terms of its longevity. In 1992, Tata Steel had an employee strength of about 80,000 people, some 5,000 executives and 75,000 unionized category of people for making and selling and marketing 2 million tons of steel. This is about 8 to 10 times the global norm, which means in terms of manpower productivity, we were at 10% to 12% of the global best-in-class companies. Now, this is clearly unsustainable. We would die with this kind of a thing. While this is the result of long years of administered control and paternalistic philosophy that a controlled era brings and fosters, we had to deal with the issue. Because sometimes in transformation, there are pleasant issues to tackle, but there are also times when you have to tackle unpleasant issues. A leader needs to deal with all kinds of issues. Since we had no money and no way to quickly increase our production capacity, the only answer and the only solution was to go into a severe manpower reduction. It's a crude thing to say, but it had to be done. But the challenge was not the process itself. The challenge was that it had to be done at Tata Steel, which has a long history of caring for its employees like no other company does in India, which is the pioneer in introducing many, many labor welfare measures. A company that has had no industrial dispute for more than 70 years at that time, and where working together between labor and management was an acknowledged global benchmark. It is this kind of a company that had to reduce people and try to increase the productivity something like 10 or 12 times, which is in a short period of time is really an unbelievable task. But we decided to implement it. But as humanly as possible, we prepared the union leadership and our workers for some 3 or 4 years by regularly communicating with them. We used to communicate about the employee numbers, about the global benchmarks on these, our manpower costs, and draw a picture on what would happen if we continue with the huge manpower that we had at that point in time. Through repeated presentations and meetings, it became clear to everyone, including the workers, including the executives, including the union leadership, that if we continue the current status quo, we will be not only in very serious trouble, we will probably be facing closure in the next 8 to 10 years. It was very, very clear. We started this communication package sometime in 1992. And by 1995, every person in the company knew of the problem. And more importantly, were willing to accept it as a problem and support a move for manpower reduction, but not so easily. This is probably unprecedented anywhere in the world, and I see it as a result of trust and confidence in the leadership team. People also knew that we would be humane in putting this into action. We introduced a separation scheme, a very generous one, where an employee got a salary for the years till he reached his retirement age. If somebody was at the age of 40 and he was leaving, he would get a 20 years salary every month till he reached the age of 60. He was also allowed to retain his house till he became 60. He was also allowed full medical benefits for himself and his family. All this looked extremely expensive. In fact, the Western financial analysts used to often ask us that, look, you guys either have a lot of money to throw about or you people have got no brains. We said we don't have money, and which is why we are doing it. And I can tell you that it's as I said, it is not a very nice thing to say, but if there is a job for one person and if you employ 3 people, about 1/3 of the job will get done, not 3 times the job. We have always seen it. In fact, but we persisted on and succeeded against all these odds. As against 80,000 for 2 million tons in 1995, today we have 40,000 people for 13 million tons in Indian operations, which is about 12 to 13-fold increase in manpower productivity in about 20 years' time. Every year, as we reduced our people by about 5,000, we used to add 1,000 people in order to ensure that our manpower mix becomes better and better over a period of time. The key issue here is not simply manpower reduction. It has been done in many companies in the world. Even though by itself it is beyond most people's comprehension that such a thing is actually possible in the world. The key issue is that it was done with the active support of the union. This is the transformation of the kind you would not see anywhere in the world except even in India or anywhere in the world. And it takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage to do it. And more importantly, a trust and a mutual trust between the management and the employees of the company. We did something similar exercise with our executives some years later during 2000 and 2001. It is called the performance ethics exercise. We realized quite bluntly, which is also, to my mind, in retrospect, an obvious conclusion and an obvious realization, that in an administered controlled era, when you have no competition, when you have, you don't have innovative spirit and your creativity is not rewarded by the market, where everything is bottled up, this is not conducive for executive development. And it is not a conducive atmosphere for leadership development. Without having a proper method of distinguishing between good performers and average performers, people often get promoted or given higher responsibilities simply by experience and the number of years they have put in. This tends to result in an organization which to become flabby and slow. And that is what happened to Tata Steel by the year 2000, and we said we must correct it. And this is part of the very huge transformation process. With the help of two consultants, we drew up a new and slim organization chart for Tata Steel. It had place for about 4,000 executives as against 5,000 that we had at that time. We developed job profiles for each of these 4,000 jobs. We assessed, partly through an external assessment and partly through in-house assessment, we assessed each of the over 5,000 executives for their functional skills and more importantly, or as importantly as the functional skill, on their attitudinal, managerial and leadership skills. Then we matched people's skills with the requirements of the job. This obviously resulted in about 1,000 executives being in excess and about 400 executives having competence and skills required for jobs which are at lower levels in the hierarchy than what they were occupying. This means sending out 1,000 executives and lowering the level of responsibilities of some around 400 executives. These are not easy jobs. These are not an easy task. And especially in an organization and especially in a scenario that persists in Jamshedpur, where the company is the family, where the company is the town, where the society is every member of the employment who is in the employment of the company. So these are very difficult things to do in a situation. We are not living in New York or Bombay where everybody is anonymous. But we had to do it, however unpopular it may be and however challenging it may be. We gave individual feedbacks to each of these 1,400 executives. I remember, and I can never forget this, I remember facing about 1,000 irate wives whose husbands were either separated from the company or having to shift to lower responsibilities. It was one of the most difficult dialogue sessions that I have had in my life. At the end of the 2-hour session, I would not say everybody was satisfied. Perhaps, most probably, no one was satisfied. But most people probably felt that we have acted in the interest of the organization and we have not been biased in our judgment. Talking about severe manpower reduction or bringing people down to lower levels of responsibility does not give one a comfortable feeling. It even sounds like bravado and breast thumping. It is clearly not pleasant talking about it in public, but I am purposely doing so to bring to everyone's attention that transformation of organizations is not all bed of roses. You have to, at times, take some very, very difficult decisions. Managing people and being good at it does not mean only smiling at them or treating them well alone. It also means accepting current reality. It means tough decisions, but at the same time taking fair decisions. In fact, it is the hallmark of a good leader if you can take tough decisions, sometimes very unpopular, but being called a fair and unbiased leader. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that of all the transformational initiatives that Tata Steel took over a 50-year-long period that I have been in the company, I believe that the manpower rationalizations and the performance ethic program have been probably the most impactful and brought about the maximum transformational effect throughout the organization. Let me now move on to another important dimension of institutional transformation. Institutional transformation is not technical or managerial. That's what I said earlier. It is not knowledge-based. It is not that if you have a lot of PhDs or MBAs, transformation will happen. It is actually an emotion-driven event. People are central to institutional transformation, and without their support and involvement of people, no institutional transformation can happen, especially in large organizations. So therefore, creating a vision for the organization and involving people in creating vision is a very good way to involve and emotionalize people and which can lead to transformation. In the early 90s, we at Tata Steel created a vision to become the lowest cost producer of steel in the world. At a time, we were one of the highest cost producer of steel in India. Forget about the world. And we did not even know how to go about it. But this is a time, as I said, when we were not even the lowest cost producer of steel in India. we involved people. And we did a lot of experiments and trials and errors and freedom and so on. And by the year 2000, some 8 years down the line, we actually became the acknowledged lowest cost producer of steel in the world. In fact, in one of the magazines, Metal Magazine 33 of the year 2001, there are a picture of 3 CEOs, 3 best steel companies in the world, of which Tata Steel was one. And only 10 years earlier in the year 1990, the consultant told us, you guys probably are going to die because you are not ready to face the world. When our costs were getting better under this vision program to become the lowest cost producer of steel in the world, we created a new vision, which we called it as customer har hal mein. Customer har hal mein means customer always in the front. The whole organization was focused on the customer, and we introduced new products and new concepts for satisfying customers. Today, after years of long efforts, I can tell you that Tata Steel is a very unique position in the steel industry of the world as probably the most efficient customer-centric organization. By the year 2001, by which time we had become a little bit better in controlling costs, we had become a little bit better in producing products that the customer wants and actually satisfying the customers better than any other competitor that India could, we created a new vision. About 30 of us senior executives met at a place for 2 days in Jamshedpur and dreamt of the future together and came up with 8 to 10 strawman ideas. Then I decided to write to all the employees. We had about 40,000 employees at that time. I wrote individual letters to all the employees saying that the company needs a new vision. We need to find out what we will become in 5 years' time, 5-6 years' time. And this is what exercise that we had done. The 30 of us assembled at a place, and these are the ideas which have come out. But I would like to hear from you. So on these personal letters of these 40,000 people, of course, I got responses from all the 4,000 executives. But what is more remarkable and what is unbelievable that when I got it, I realized is that 10,000 workers responded to this call, saying as to what is their view of the company's vision. And when the vision finally came out, every one of them felt that it was their idea, it was their vision, and therefore it must be done. So, after several rounds of discussion with various groups of people in the company, we chose a very stretched vision. Vision, when you keep a vision, it must be achievable, but it must be very stretched, and it must be clear, and it must be understood by all. We chose a vision called that we must become an EVA positive company. EVA, what it means is economic value added, where your return on invested capital is higher than the cost of capital. So we said we must become that in 5 years' time. The reason we chose that vision was because we realized that between 1907, when Tata Steel was established, and 2001, when we formed this vision, in these 94 years, Tata Steel had been EVA positive only for 2 years. Only for 2 years. Partly because of administrative control and government socialistic era and all that. But the fact of the matter is that we were EVA positive only for 2 years. And it is simply unsustainable in a free economy. And this global steel industry between 1975 and the year 2000 was on the whole destroyed wealth. It was EVA negative. So we said we must put a vision or a goal that nobody has achieved, that we ourselves have not achieved so well in the past, and the world steel industry has not achieved for 25 years. And I can tell you, after announcing that, after formulating that, it was cascaded in various departments for almost 1 year. There are furious discussions going on in every section, in every department about what is EVA, there are posters, every car had a banner and all kinds of things. Now, and it was communicated in a very intense manner. And whenever you go to any department and you say that what are you people doing, everybody will say in Hindi, hum log ko EVA positive banane ka hai. Even though EVA positive probably was not very well understood at that point of time, but everybody wanted to become that. I want to tell you that what we set our goal as 5 years that we will become EVA positive, we actually became in 2 years' time. We became EVA positive in the year 2003. It was quite unbelievable, because I then got finally firmly convinced that the 40,000 people of an organization have all their minds pointing out in one direction. There is really no power on earth which can stop that from happening. That is the power of vision. And a leadership's primary job is to drive the people's minds to create a common vision for the organization. Vision is not a boardroom statement. A vision is not simply a statement that comes from the boardroom and you say everybody does it. The more people get involved in creating of the vision, in fact, vision has got 2 or 3 characteristics. One is it must be co-created. Even if you are not able to co-create it with 40,000 people, co-create it with 5,000 people, with 10,000 people, but don't sit around in the boardroom and just say this is going to be the vision of the company. It must be stretched, it must be clear and understood by all. EVA positive was an extremely difficult target to achieve. And ever since we formed that vision, and even today, the Indian operations of Tata Steel has been EVA positive every single year, whereas it was EVA positive for 2 years out of the 94 years between 1907 and 2001. That's the power of that vision. I have been associated with Tata Steel for some 52 years, 48 years as an employee between 1966 and 2014, and the last 4 years post-retirement since 2014. It's an unbelievably different company post-1991, and even more so today than what I have seen it till 1990. What started in the early 90s as initiatives and measures for survival of the company in a new liberalized economic era compared to the past socialistic era that we lived in, those measures of survival, it became habit forming, and slowly it got into the DNA of every employee. And today you will not hear the word transformation in Jamshedpur when you go in Tata Steel anymore, because it has become very much part and parcel of a DNA of the bloodstream of the company. You know, I come back to my central theme that to live long and to serve customers and the community over long periods of time, institutions must transform themselves continuously and learn to transform themselves all the time. Corporate history tells us that the elixir of sustainability is for institutions to learn to transform themselves on a continuous basis. From what I have read and heard, and from what I have seen today morning and this afternoon, I see Ganga Hospital to be a place well versed in the transformation process. Otherwise, you will not be where you are today and be counted as one of the best in your chosen field. You are also in a very important sector, the health sector. The healthcare industry, to the extent that I understand is by far the largest industry in the world in terms of size and in terms of the employment that it generates. It is true that in India too also it is true, and or if it is not true today, it will become so very soon. It is also the most important industry from the point of view of welfare of the human population. India has got many challenges in the health sector. With only 6% share of the global hospital beds and only 8% share of the doctors vis-a-vis 20% share of the global disease burden, Indian healthcare structure probably is not in very good shape. We also need to provide health at affordable cost. These are big challenges. These are not small challenges. And in the midst of all this, I see hospitals like the Ganga Hospital as a beacon of light. All the best in your efforts, and thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.